How you doing, guys? Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com. It is still 30 days of preparedness. September's National Preparedness Month. As you probably know if you're watching this video, this is one of the videos in the series of 30 Days of Preparedness, which is hosted, I don't know, by Morgan from Rogue Preparedness. So link will be in the description to the entire list of all the people who are making these videos, and there's a lot of great stuff out there. But this video is about 4 ways that you can turn your home into a castle of security and safety, whether that's just normal times, shit the fan times, civil unrest, whatever. Basic home kind of, I don't even know what the word you would use. Security. Good word. We'll stick with that one. So to start this off, you may be thinking, I sleep like a baby. I don't have to worry about this. What's all this talk of home preparedness? I'm just going to run out to the woods anyway. Here's some stats for you. These are from the FBI and some home security and insurance companies. Stats on home invasions, burglaries, that sort of thing. There's over 500,000, close to 600,000 burglaries every year, and something like, I think 8% of them involve assault. So that's the worst case scenario, obviously. Good news is most of the time they're trying to do it when you're not home. So actually, it seems like nighttime is when you're like worried that someone might break in, but most burglaries happen during the day because they want people to be gone. Most of the time they're coming to rob stuff. They're not coming to take you out, but that could happen. But most of the time they're during the day. And almost 90% of them go unsolved. This is kind of unrelated to anything else in the video, but it's interesting to note that men are 17% more likely to be burglarized than women. I have no idea why that may be the case. Maybe men don't take as many security precautions because they're not as worried about it. Maybe they have cooler stuff that's more likely to be robbed. Maybe they're more likely to live on their own or in bad parts of town. I have no idea, but it's interesting to know that. Here's the most important part of the data, though, is that they broke down the data and all the ways that they get into the house and things, and something around 70%, 60 to 70% gain entry by breaking in through a door or a window. A huge number of burglaries occur by people just trying doorknobs and walking in. So obviously, the first tip, this is a freebie, keep your doors locked. I mean, I don't know why that is even a thing, but you should never have your door, front door, back door, anything just completely unlocked where someone could just walk in, because they absolutely do that, and it's a very easy way to avoid any sort of issues. If you just go up to a door, try it, and it's open, you don't have to worry about alarms, you don't have to worry about people looking around and calling the cops. Most of the time they're not going to assume that someone's just walking in there. So keep your doors locked. But even if you are keeping them locked, it's not that hard to break in. So before I get into any more of the details on that, I will tell you the 4 ways to make your house a castle. The 4 ways you're going to do it is through detection, deterrence, fortification, and defense. I tried really hard to think of a synonym for fortification that started with a D, so I could give you just 4 Ds, but I couldn't do it. The only thing I come up with is maybe to densify, but that's it really doesn't work. So we're going to stick with fortification. But the first one is detection. You want to know that it's happening. So there's all sorts of ways that you can set things up to know when your house is being burglarized or attempting to be burglarized. Obviously cameras, they're way better, way cheaper now than they ever were before. As much as I don't like Ring as a company because they give over information without warrants, I think they've shut, Amazon as a company shut people down for thinking they said slurs when they didn't even say it, stuff like that. There are other companies, but in general, cameras, obviously, huge benefit. Especially nowadays with the technology to look at the video when you're not even there or from anywhere in the house, motion activated, all that stuff. Look into it. Cameras are super important, and they can help you out too if you're ever, in any sort of incident. To have a real record of what actually happened, full-on video, could save your ass. So obviously cameras is a big part of detection. Alarms as well. You can have ones that go off when windows open. You can have pressure pads, so if people are standing even in front of your door without even breaking in yet, they could go off. And I would even classify dogs as a detection method if they're good at it. Some dogs bark at everything, which makes them useless, and some dogs bark at nothing, which makes them just as useless, but less annoying. But obviously detection is only one part of the problem. Knowing that a person's trying to break into your house isn't actually going to stop your stuff from getting stolen or stop them or protect you or anything like that. It's just the first step. I've talked before about OODA loops, the decision-making process that you have to go through, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. Observing is the first step. So obviously you have to detect in some way, and the more quickly you detect them, the more time you have to figure out what you're going to do. But detection is only the first step. You still have to deter them at least, which is the next category. And for my purposes here, deterrence is only talking about making them think like it's not a good idea to burglarize their house. So making them more likely to decide not to burglarize their house or decide to stop mid-burglary. It's not, the deterrence category has nothing to do with physically repelling them. It's all about just making it less of a appealing target. So there's a few things you can do for that. A lot of it's based on appearance. If it looks like a place that's either going to have issues for them or maybe even not have good stuff for them to steal, anything like that, the general appearance, you don't want to look like an easy target. So just like dogs could be an alarm, any dog can be an alarm if they're barking, when someone's trying to break in, but particularly big dogs can be an actual deterrent. That's one of the first things you always hear about when burglars are worried about things. Oh, is this going to have a big dog that mauls me? And like I've mentioned to some of you guys in the video, I did have Mongo did pass away earlier this year, so it's just been a fantastic year for me so far, which I'm super bummed about, obviously. But he was great at deterrence because even though he was a big baby, he had a 22-inch neck and a head the size of basically a basketball. So people see him and they would not want to mess with him, even though he probably wouldn't do anything. But I didn't want anyone to know that because he looked mean and scary as hell, which is a great deterrent. When people see a huge, 100-pound dog with a head bigger than theirs, especially when they are a pit bull or one of these breeds that are known for being more aggressive or more dangerous, that is a deterrent. That is definitely going to affect people's decision to break in. And alarms as well, like I've mentioned, they are a detection, but for the criminal, they could be a deterrent because all of a sudden it's loud, they're worried that everyone knows, that they're worried that maybe it's calling the police already. So alarms are a pretty good deterrent too, depending on the thief. And then things as simple as lights. Just like the alarm, when someone walks up to the front of your house, if it is at night, boosh, lights come on. Again, they're not being able to hide. Now they're worried that maybe other things are happening, like cameras are recording or signals being sent to the police. So it's not actually physically stop them, but lights can make them a lot more reluctant to continue doing it. So obviously if you've gotten past the detection and the deterrent stages, now we're getting into the fun stuff. And the next one is fortification. And this, I think, is the most important when it comes down to it. Because like I said earlier in the video, the vast majority of break-ins where the door was not just open and they walked in are just very low skill, low effort attacks at physically breaking in through a door or a window. So if you can make your doors and your windows even a little bit harder to break in, it will insanely reduce your risk of being burglarized. In fact, I've always been blown away that insurance companies haven't lobbied for building codes that make doors simply not able to be kicked in by an adult human. It's insane to me that if you look at the way a deadbolt works, even a cheap deadbolt has a half-inch tube of steel that no one is breaking. I don't care how cheap your deadbolt is, you can't kick through that. It's a chunk of metal. Even shooting them open doesn't normally work. What fails is the fact that your door frame is just wood, and the hole that they drill for the deadbolt means that there's just basically an inch of wood on either side, and that's all you have to kick through. Is just blast it right open. The only thing I can come up with as to why that's not like a law that they have to make them not able to be kicked, and this is just, my personal opinion, is that I don't think the government and police want it to be hard to get into people's houses. That's my personal opinion, because otherwise it makes no sense to me. They have rules about like railings so people don't fall and die, all sorts of stuff, but yet a $200 to $500 increase when you're building a house would make it virtually impossible to break in, and they don't do that. But the absolute good news is that you can still do it after the fact. You don't have to have a vault door or a steel frame. You can do some very simple things that make it virtually impossible to kick in your door without at least some heavy duty tools. Yeah, you can update your deadbolt, but the main thing you want to do is get a strike plate that covers the piece of wood and basically attaches to it, and then use a long, like 3-inch screws on there. There's stuff like door armor. There's some smaller ones that just fit on the actual spot where the deadbolt enters. That'll still make a big difference, because the bottom line is you want it to make it that something is holding the force of the deadbolt other than just that sliver of wood that is on the other side. And so even something as simple as replacing the plate, the strike plate, with a slightly larger one and having 3-inch or 4-inch screws on there that go all the way into the door frame, that'll make a big difference. That'll stop most normal humans from kicking in your door. But if you got like an evil Jack Reacher or Brock Lesnar or something on the other side, you want to go a little bit more heavy duty than that. And the door armor is just a piece of metal that goes all the way down the entire length, and you sink in 3-inch screws. Very doable for most even remotely handy people. And that makes it so that to kick the door open, you would have to kick hard enough to tear off the entire board on that side of the door frame, which is not going to happen for most people. And beyond strengthening that, there's a couple other options that I really like for physically blocking the door from swinging open. I've made videos before in the past about On Guard, which is a lock system that you screw a plate into the ground, and then you have a removable just block or barrier. It's like a lightweight, high-density plastic, so that when you're inside, you just put that in, and even if they kick through your door armor, the door cannot physically swing open. And that one I think is discontinued. They have other versions. One I've seen that I like a lot that doesn't connect to the ground. It connects to the frame. I think it would be good to have one also on the ground, but it's called Flip Lock, I think, and they look really cool, relatively inexpensive. Would probably be easier to install in a lot of cases, because with the On Guard you have to get like a Tapcon drill bit and the screws to mount it into concrete if you have concrete. If you have tile by the door, you have to be really careful not to crack it. So it takes a little bit more skill to put in the On Guard. So I would definitely look into the Flip Lock. I might even contact those guys and have me send me one, because I have not dealt with them, so I can't vouch for it yet. But I definitely like the concept, and the price is right, so check out the description if you want to see either of those. And I'll put the closest thing that they have to On Guard out there that I can find on Amazon is, but just keep in mind that I haven't used that. I only have the On Guards, and they worked fine. So now your door is basically incapable of being kicked in, maybe even incapable of being busted open with a battering ram. So what's the next step? The only other place that people get in, according to these stats, are bottom windows, whether it's first floor window or basement window. Only like 2% of all burglaries occurred through a second floor window. So these are some brave people, or maybe it's a special building where there's a shielded side with a tree right next to it or whatever. So much less of a concern. So we can eliminate 98% of burglaries. 98% of burglaries if you can just stop them from being able to break in a first floor door or window. That seems like a pretty good low-hanging fruit, really good cost to benefit ratio. So the windows are a little bit harder to deal with if you want to make them truly impervious. The best solution, it's not cheap, but the best solution is to have some kind of window screens, security screens, or window bars. Doesn't always look great, but there's many more options now. You don't have to get the wrought iron bars that make you look like you're in the ghetto. They have screens. They're fairly common out here because they also help with sunlight. The screens are better because there's no gaps in between that even like rocks and bricks and things could be thrown through. And they, in general, they tend to look a little better. So that is going to cost you. How much depends on a lot. But I mean, you would be looking at several $1,000s, but I highly recommend it if you can do it. I have them on the house here and the security door. So the peace of mind knowing that it would take at least like minutes. Like none of these options are 100% prevent any of this stuff, but it just makes the amount of effort and time, more importantly, that it would take way higher. So someone, would have to be getting crowbars and all sorts of beating and ripping open the door or window to get in here, and if you give me more, if someone's breaking into my house and you give me more than 2 or 3 minutes to get ready, I'm gonna have a nice, solid, welcoming party ready for you. That I can guarantee. Fun times would be had by all. So the actual physical metal screens are great because they protect the window itself too. But a cheaper option, which still works really well, is window films. They have these films now which are basically a big sheet that you stick to the window, kind of like how you would do window tinting, and some of them will be tinted as well too if you want that. But they're extremely durable, and you know, even someone like wailing on it with a bat or a brick, the window will crack, like the glass itself will break, but this really tough plastic sheeting or whatever it's made out of, some kind of polymer, prevents them from actually being able to come in. Like, it'll still just be a broken window stuck together by this giant piece of kind of like tape, if you will. And it would have to eventually rip the glass out of where it's mounted into the edge of the windowsill, which can happen, but again, it takes a lot of work and it gives you plenty of time. So, and it also prevents anything from actually coming in through the window. So if someone threw a brick, it won't come in, or if they threw a Molotov cocktail, it'll at least blow up on the outside of the house, things like that. So the window films are cool alternative, not as tough as the physical, you know, storm shutters or metal security screens or anything like that, but it would be cheaper, probably something you can do yourself a lot more easily than mounting on these screens. So definitely something to look at. And other fortifications you can do are even putting something like gnarly plants underneath windows and up against fences and other areas where people might try to hide or have to stand to climb into a window. So if you have, like, there's some gnarly types of cactuses out here called like choyas, which if you even just bump into, they're called jumping choyas. They don't actually jump, but it's so, they're like pop off or fly off, and they stick to you so easily, and they're just the gnarliest cactus ever. So if you have one of those under the window, you can't even get close enough to a window to try and pry it open, or up against a fence. If you're not in a place where those grow, there's usually always some sort of plant with built-in defense mechanisms, like even some blackberry bushes or something that can climb along a fence to prevent people from hiding there, from climbing it, whatever. Won't physically stop someone if they're, you know, crazed or if they have tools, but again, no one's gonna want to just run through a bush of thorns, and that'll make it much more difficult and take much more time. So some of you are probably thinking at this point, okay, I've bolstered my door to where it can't possibly be kicked in by a normal mortal, but it still has the lock. What if they just pick the lock? Now, the flip lock and the on guard, if you're in the house, will prevent the door from being opened, even if they had a key, let alone picked it. So that's one option. But if you're not there, or if you don't have those, there's actually, there are a bunch of really high-end locks you can get to replace the one that you have, and that's certainly an option. But that's usually pretty expensive. The ones that are like Abus, you know, locks and things like that are really tough, really hard to pick, are going to be expensive. But there is an actual really cheap, kind of simple upgrade you can do that makes locks virtually unpickable unless you're extremely skilled and know you have done the upgrade. So what you can do, and I will put the link below in the description to a video by Lockpicking Lawyer, who is an awesome channel about all things related to lockpicking and things like that. But he goes over how you can take apart pretty much any normal lock, deadbolt, whatever, and replace the pins with these wafers and these security pins that make it so that if you are trying to pick it, it will actually seize up because of the way that you'll get a false set when you're trying to pick it. You'll think that the pins have popped into place, but what it has actually done is seized up the lock completely to where you won't be able to continue picking it or even use a key at that point. You'll have to take it apart from the inside. So it's a serious thing, but it would never happen with the key. It would only happen if you're trying to pick it. And the good thing is that you'll still, if someone comes up, even if they're an expert lockpicker, if they come up to the house and they see you just have a normal schleg, they're not going to know about this. So it's something that if you don't know about it, it's almost impossible to pick it. And even if you do know about it, you have to be extremely skilled, and if you mess up, it seizes. So it makes it incredibly difficult to pick, incredibly unlikely that someone would get in through a simple picking method. Certainly something like bump keys or even leashy tools and things like that. You would have to be extremely skilled at lockpicking and know about it to get past it. So it's a great thing to do if you're worried about lockpicking, and relatively inexpensive compared to the other options. So we've gone to 2 Ds and the F. We're down to the last D, and that is defense. That is physically engaging or combating someone who tries to break into your house. So that is the option. I have another video. I can't talk today. I have another video coming up about defense options for everyone. That should be on the 28th. So I'm not going to get too into the details about what those options are, because I think I can expand on those in another video, and this one's already getting pretty long. But obviously, I think people watching this channel can use their imaginations to come up with all the different things you could do. Certainly guns being the obvious one, but physical defense is something that you need to be prepared for. So just to recap, we got detection, deterrence, fortification, and defense. And if you do even a handful of the things on this list, if you have the, I think if you can do one thing, anything, if you take anything away from this video, it's upgrade your strike plate or get the door armor. That's it, that on the exterior doors. If you have that, that will decrease your chance of being burglarized by, you know, at least 50 to 75%. If you add in the screen door or the storm doors and the over the windows, even the film, you're really down to like a 5. Like you've taken whatever the risk is and you're reduced it to almost nothing. And then if you add in even a couple more of the deterrent things, then you're not even gonna get to use the defensive options that I'll go into later in the video, because it's just going to be so unlikely that some normal criminal can break in. Obviously, if you get the cartels after you or other sort of gangs that have uniforms and might show up, I'm not going to get into any Fed posting, but then, you know, it's a different story. But still, even people with a battering ram and a team of people, if you have metal storm door, bolstered strike plate and frame, physical blocks like the on guard and everything, you're gonna have some time. No matter what they show up with, you're gonna have a little bit of time to get ready if that's what you want to do. So let me know what you guys think. If you have any other options that you don't think I mentioned about how to increase your home security. We're getting to a point in this country where it's becoming more and more important. Even in areas where you might think that you're safe, there's certainly not a bad reason or not a good reason not to do this, some of these things, because like I said, if you're talking about for somewhere between $100 and $500, you can reduce your risk of normal types of burglaries to almost zero. And that's pretty significant, especially when you consider that, you know, like I said, something like 8 or 10% of these include assault. So even if you don't care about your stuff, you should care about yourself and your family, your bodily autonomy, your health, all that stuff. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think. Make sure to check out all the other 30 Days of Preparedness videos, and I will talk to you soon.